Welcome back, and what we're going to start off with now is to actually make the basketball hoop, so we have something to shoot at. Alright, to do that, we should have the prototype asset loaded up on the left hand side. If you don't have that, go up into Tools, Prototype, Prototype Window, and then you can drag that window to wherever you want. I want mine on the left. A lot of people don't realize that the hoop is actually kind of sticking out from the backboard a little bit by this little brace, so we got to make sure we include that just to make it a little bit more realistic. And then we'll also put the braces in so it can be connected to the floor somehow, and you can set that up how you want. Alright, so to get the basis down, I won't do all of it with you, you can figure it out on your own, but just so you got the main tools, you'll want to click on this shape button in the prototype asset. It brings up this new window, and right now it's inserting a cube, and you can move this to wherever you like. Alright, and now we'll want to change it. If we start making the hoop, we'll want to do a pipe. Alright, so this pipe doesn't look exactly how a rim should look, but we can change that. So I'll leave my radius at 1, the height 0.2. You guys can play around with this however you'd like. I'll make it 0.1. It's going to be kind of thin. Number of sides, we want to make it circular. The more sides you have, the more circular it looks. Default minimum is 3. You can do 10, 15, okay, 20. Alright, let's get, if you want to be a little zany and make it look super nice, you can make it 100. I actually like that. I'll leave it like that. The height segments means how many segments it's actually broken into vertically. So right now by putting 1, it has this little break in here. So by changing this to 0, now that break is gone. It's just one entire thing. I'm actually going to leave it at 0 because the rim's one solid piece. And once you're ready to plop it into Unity, go ahead and build pipe, and now it's an actual Unity game object. Alright, so I'll go ahead and get rid of that for right now. And here's our rim. A rim is usually orange, right? So we need to create a material for that. And just so it's pretty easy and low memory, we'll create a material in our materials folder here. Create material, and I'll select orange, and then I'll modify this texture to have the orange color, and then just drag it onto our object. There we go. So there's our orange rim. Alright, you can create the other structures, the backboard, the brace, and the pipes with prototype if you want to. I'm just going to create normal Unity game objects because they're pretty plain. So I'm going to use a cube, and then I'll adjust the scale so it looks correct. So 0.2, 0.1, change the backboard so it's a little bigger. It's probably longer than it is tall. Okay, if you look back at your hoop, you can use that as a reference. So there's my backboard. I'm going to change the material on this. I don't want it to have a default, so I'm going to create a new material, and I'm just going to leave it as white. Okay, I don't even have to change the color. It's already white. I'll drag that on there. It doesn't change it, but I just like applying a material so it's not the default. Oops. Name this rim. Name this backboard. Alright, and there's that white material. Alright, I'm going to create the brace that connects the hoop to the backboard. So one thing, if you want to make the brace the same height in the Y direction as the rim, just go ahead and check out your Y position here. So I'm going to make it 2.5, and then I'll make this Y position the exact same, 2.5. Alright, and that looks good. Even though the texture looks like it's overlapping there a little bit, it doesn't know which one to apply on top, I'm going to give the same material to this. So now since it's the same color, you won't actually see that. It's still happening, but you can't see it anymore. Alright, so there's the basis, backboard, and rim. Right, we can always change the size later. It may be a little big now, but alright, go ahead and create your pipes if you want to connect it to the floor. Notice that we're creating all these game objects, that it's kind of getting overwhelming in the hierarchy. So once we create all these objects and put the hoop together, what we can do is create a parent game object and then child all these different objects to the same parent, so then that whole thing will be the hoop. Alright, so I got my hoop all set up. I got the braces in there. Kind of hard to see with the lighting. I'm actually going to create a new material and I'll call this one black, and I want the posts and the back brace to be black. So I'm just going to drag this material onto my braces here so it's a little easier to see. There we go. I like that better. So now let's go ahead and create an empty game object, and we'll call this hoop. And now what I'm going to do is child all of these little pieces to this main game object. First I'm going to reset its position, rotation, and scale, so it'll put it right in the middle of the game. But that's not too big of a deal, because when we click on these pieces and drag them up into the parent, now they're going to be connected to the hoop. And if I open this up, you'll see it's a child now. Bring down the brace, the post, do all that. Back brace and backboard. Do all three at the same time. There we go. So all these pieces are part of the hoop, which is the main game object, and you can now see that they're all connected together. When I move this hoop around, all the objects move at the same. Alright. If I go in game, it's probably too low. We can raise it up there. It's not too bad. Next thing we need to do is put in the net. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new pipe. And it's going to have similar properties to the rim. I'm going to keep it the same diameter, or radius, 1. And the height's going to be a little shorter. So you can play around with this however you want. We can always change it later. The segments, I'm actually going to break it into a few different segments. That looks good. And the size, a little bit more than that, we'll do 8. Thickness, it needs to be super thin since it is a net. Even smaller than that. That looks good. Alright, go ahead and build that. It's now a Unity object. And I'll put it into place. The net will go slightly below the rim. Bring it down a little bit. It does need to be connected to the rim, because what we're going to do is create a cloth out of it. So when the basketball goes through it, it should be able to move a little bit. But we can do that later. Just going to minimize all these components so we're not looking at all that. I am going to give it a new material. However, we need a net texture. If you look in the YouTube comments, you will see a net texture that you can import, just like we did these other textures. So I'm going to right click in my textures folder, import new asset, and I'm going to go to the folder that has our assets in it, and I want to click on net and import that. Alright. What we'll want to do is make sure you turn alpha to transparent, which means the white will turn to transparent, so you'll be able to see through the net instead of just showing solid white. Go ahead and apply that. You should see the checkered background in the preview. Alright, go ahead and drag that onto your game object. It might look a little funny right now, but we'll be able to change that. Click on your material in your materials folder as net. Go ahead and change it to transparent diffuse. Alright, and there is our net. Alright, the net is going straight down, however, so we'll want to go ahead and make it so it's curved like a normal basketball net. If we look at our picture, notice how it's curved in. We can go ahead and do that. So right now I'm going to rename it to net so don't lose it. I'm going to parent it to the hoop. And now let's go ahead and change the bottom. So once you click on the object, you'll see these two buttons here, object and element. If you click on element, you can now actually change the shape using either vertices, edges, or faces. I'm going to choose faces because I'm actually going to drag some of these points in. Alright, so I'm going to drag my faces. I'm going to select my scale tool, and now I'm going to scale this in. Okay, doesn't look quite like a net yet. It seems to be a little bit too small, so I'll scale it back out. And now I want to grab my vertices, and I'm going to grab the vertices in the middle. I'm going to make a box around them. Oop, gotta have the object selected first. There it is. So I'm grabbing those middle vertices, and again I'm going to grab scale. I'm going to scale these in as well. You can kind of see the net starting to make the shape it needs to be. Not beautiful, not perfect, but good nonetheless. You can critique that until you have it the way you want to. Alright, when you're done with that, make sure you click back on object mode. That'll get rid of the prototype editing, and you'll go back. Save scene, save project. Next thing we should do is create a new empty game object, and this is going to be the game master game object, just like we did with the Rollerball project. This is going to house a lot of scripts that deals with the scoring, the GUI, or meaning the user interface, and all that stuff. So we're going to create a new script in the scripts folder, and we'll call it game controller. It's going to control a lot of the main game functions. Go ahead and drag that onto your game master object. Alright, so when we play the game, you'll notice that the actual mouse cursor doesn't stay in the center of the game window. If I move it around, notice the cursor's moving around. It should stay in the middle. That's how we're going to be able to grab the basketballs. There's an issue with playtesting. It doesn't automatically go to the middle, so we're going to have to set that up in the script. So if we open up our game controller script, let's go ahead and set that up. Alright, we're going to need both the start and the update. So I'm just going to set this up so it looks okay. And it's only just a few lines of code. So when the game is started, we want the cursor to be locked. Alright, so we set that up here. Alright, that'll work for our actual build of the game. It'll work for playtesting. However, in playtesting, for some reason, the cursor isn't locked to the middle of the screen. On the build, this happens. On the playtesting, it does not. So what we have to do is set up a temporary command so that when we press a key, we can unlock it and relock it, and it'll automatically lock the mouse cursor to be in the middle of the screen. So we're setting up these lines of code here. So we're going to basically say that we want to unlock the cursor. So we can say false here, however we can't relock it after we do that. So we could put in checks that say if it's unlocked, lock it, if it's locked, unlock it. However, the easier way to do that is to use an exclamation mark and then whatever command you want to change. So for example, by doing this, whatever screen lock cursor is, if it's true, this exclamation mark will change it to the other value, it'll change it to false. If it already is false, it'll change it to true. So when you hit I, it just switches back and forth. Or if you change the key, whatever key you pressed. Alright, we'll save that. Come back into Unity. Looks like there's no errors. Playtest. Notice that you cannot see the mouse cursor because it's locked on the screen. If we hit I, it unlocks it. On my view, it's over on the left-hand side. If I re-hit I, it'll lock it to the middle of the screen. If I unlock it again, notice where the mouse cursor popped out. It changed position, so it's now in the middle of the screen. So the whole reason we had to do that is because we're going to put a cursor right in the middle of the screen, right where the mouse cursor is. And that's what's going to be able to allow us to either pick up a ball or pick up another ball, shoot it, all that kind of good stuff. Alright, so before we end the tutorial, let's go ahead and put that crosshair in. So you've already imported a texture. If you select that texture here, that crosshair, it's basically just a 16 by 16 white box that I created in Photoshop. We're just going to create a GUI texture, and this is going to be our crosshair. Now notice you're not going to be able to see it in the scene view, even though the object is in our hierarchy. If you go to game view, there's our white dot right in the middle of the screen. That's where we want it. Should work just fine. Okay, hit play. Alright, notice that the white dot is now the guide for your crosshair. Alright, if we hit I, notice our mouse cursor isn't there. Hit I again, it'll put it in the middle. Unlock it. There it is. Alright, so our mouse cursor is right over the GUI texture. In the next tutorial, we'll start busting out the script for the basketball and interact with it and be able to shoot it.